The afternoon light fell gently across the living room, painting everything in a soft golden hue. The house was quiet except for the rhythmic sound of the washing machine spinning in the distance. Emma Blake sat cross-legged on the couch, folding laundry in neat stacks. She liked this part of her day, the simple, calming routine that didn't require too much thought. But today, her mind wouldn't rest. Her son Ethan had come home from college the night before. He was 22 now, grown, confident, and busy with his own life. She was proud of him, of how kind and thoughtful he had become, but something about his visits always left her with mixed feelings. There was happiness, of course, but also a quiet sadness she couldn't explain. He stayed in his room most of the time, talking on the phone, laughing with friends, and scrolling through his laptop. Emma tried not to take it personally, but she missed when he used to sit beside her and tell her everything about school, his dreams, the people he liked. Those days felt like another lifetime. She reached for one of his shirts, a gray hoodie with a small tear near the pocket. She remembered buying it for him last Christmas, after saving up from extra shifts at the library. She smiled faintly, running her fingers over the soft fabric. The scent of his cologne still clung to it, familiar and comforting. It reminded her of the little boy who used to run into her arms after school, messy-haired and full of stories. Now, he was a man taller than her, with a calm confidence that made her proud but also strangely lonely. The sound of footsteps broke her thoughts. She turned slightly, expecting Ethan to walk past toward the kitchen, but instead he stopped behind her. His voice came out quiet, almost hesitant. "Mom," he said softly, "can we talk for a minute?" Emma froze for a moment, a folded towel in her hands. He rarely said that anymore. When he was younger, he would come to her for everything from small fears to big decisions, but as he grew older, their conversations had become shorter, filled with polite updates instead of real talks. Something about his tone now made her heart beat faster. She turned around slowly. "Of course, honey," she said with a smile that tried to hide her worry. "What's wrong?" Ethan shifted his weight, looking unsure. His eyes darted around the room before settling on her. There was something heavy in his expressions, something she hadn't seen in a long time. "Nothing's wrong," he said quickly. "I just need to say something." Emma waited, folding another shirt just to keep her hands busy. She could feel the tension between them, quiet but strong. The air seemed heavier. He sat down on the edge of the couch, his hands clasped together. "You've been working a lot lately," he said after a pause. "You look tired." Emma gave a small laugh. "That's what moms do, Ethan. Laundry doesn't fold itself." He smiled faintly, but didn't laugh. His serious expression made her chest tighten. "That's just it," he said. "You do everything by yourself. You've been doing that since Dad left." The mention of his father caught her off guard. It had been almost 10 years since the divorce, but the wound still lived quietly in her heart. She rarely spoke about it, and Ethan almost never brought it up. She took a breath, steadying herself. "That was a long time ago," she said, trying to sound casual. "I know," he replied, "but I never told you how I felt about it. I thought you were fine. You never talked about how hard it was." Emma looked at him, unsure how to answer. She wanted to tell him that she had been fine, that she was strong and capable. But the truth was more complicated. There were nights when she had cried alone after he went to bed, hiding her fear that she wasn't enough. There were mornings when she smiled through exhaustion just to make sure he believed everything was okay. She set the laundry aside and faced him fully. "I did what I had to do, Ethan," she said softly. "You were young. I didn't want you to worry." Ethan nodded slowly, but his eyes didn't leave hers. "I get that," he said, "but I wish I had been there for you too. You took care of me all those years, and I never really took care of you." His words caught her completely off guard. She blinked, feeling her throat tighten. "Ethan," she whispered, "you were just a kid. You didn't need to take care of me." "I know," he said again, his voice low. "But now that I'm older, I see how much you gave up. You worked 2 jobs, you never complained, and you still made me feel like I had everything. I don't think I ever said thank you." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet hum of the washing machine filled the silence again, steady and soft. Emma's eyes glistened with tears she didn't want to shed. She reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, a habit she still hadn't outgrown. "You don't have to thank me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You were the reason I kept going. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." Ethan looked at her, his expression warm but full of emotion. There was something different about the way he saw her now, not just as his mother, but as a woman who had carried so much and still stood strong. The air between them shifted, gentle but heavy with unspoken feelings, love, regret, pride, and a quiet longing for time they could never get back. Just as the moment grew deeper, the dryer beeped loudly from across the room, startling them both. Emma let out a shaky laugh, wiping at her eyes. "Well," she said with a half smile, "that's life reminding me laundry never waits." Ethan chuckled softly, the tension easing a little. "Yeah," he said, "some things never change." Emma stood up and walked toward the dryer, her heart still racing. She wasn't sure what had just happened, but something inside her had shifted. Her son, her grown-up boy, had seen her in a way no one else had in years. Not just as his mother, but as a person. As she opened the dryer door and the warmth of freshly dried clothes brushed against her face, she couldn't help but smile. Maybe she thought this was the start of something new between them, a different kind of closeness. One built not on care and protection, but on understanding and love that had matured over time. Behind her, Ethan's voice came softly again. "Mom," he said, "can we have dinner together tonight? Just the two of us." She turned around, surprised but smiling. "I'd like that," she said, and as he walked back upstairs, Emma stood for a moment in the glow of the setting sun, surrounded by the quiet rhythm of her simple life. The laundry still needed folding, the house still needed cleaning, but for the first time in years, she felt like her heart had been seen. It wasn't a grand surprise or a big moment hit, with something smaller, deeper, and infinitely more beautiful. Her son reaching out, and her realizing she was never as alone as she thought. The evening sun had begun to fade, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. The house was quiet except for the sound of the dryer finishing its cycle. Emma Blake sat back down on the couch, her hands resting on her lap, her mind still on the strange conversation she'd had with her son earlier. Ethan had surprised her. He wasn't usually one to talk about feelings. He had always been the calm one, focused, steady. But the way he had looked at her today, with that deep, thoughtful expression, had stirred emotions she hadn't felt in a long time. Moments later, Ethan came back into the room. He looked unsure, carrying 2 glasses of water. He placed one in front of her and sat down across from her, his posture a mix of nervousness and sincerity. Emma noticed how grown he looked, now broad shoulders, little stubble on his jawline, eyes filled with maturity she didn't see before. For a fleeting second, she missed the little boy who used to climb into her lap with his favorite blanket. Ethan took a slow breath. "Mom, I didn't mean to make things weird earlier," he said, his voice quiet. I've been thinking a lot lately." Emma gave a small nod. "About what?" "About us," he said. "About how different things are now. I guess I never realized how much changed after Dad left." The words hung in the air, heavy but honest. Emma stayed silent for a moment. She had spent years avoiding that topic, trying to protect both herself and Ethan from reopening old wounds. But it seemed like those years had finally caught up with them. "You were just a kid," she said softly. "I didn't want you to worry about adult problems." "I know," he replied, "but I still remember things. The nights you stayed up late doing bills, the mornings you left early for work. You always told me everything was fine, but I could tell it wasn't. You smiled, but your eyes were tired." Emma looked down, her heart aching at his words. She had worked so hard to stay strong for him, to make sure he never saw how close she had been to breaking. "I didn't want you to feel guilty," she said. "You had your own life to live." Kay leaned forward slightly. "But that's the thing, Mom. You've always carried everything alone. You never let anyone help you. I thought that's what strength meant. But now, I'm not so sure." His honesty made her throat tighten. It had been so long since someone had spoken to her with such care. She met his gaze, and for a moment the room seemed smaller, the world quieter. "Ethan," she said softly, "you don't need to worry about me now. You're doing great. You're studying. You're becoming the man I always hoped you'd be. That's all I ever wanted." He shook his head. "That's not enough for me anymore. I don't want to just be the kid who visits, eats dinner, and leaves. You're still my mom, but I want to know you as a person too. I want to understand what you went through." His words hit her deeply. She had always assumed Ethan saw her only as mom, the one who cooked, cleaned, and worried. The woman she used to be, Emma, the dreamer, the painter. The girl who once loved long drives and laughter had been buried under years of responsibility. To hear him want to know her felt like someone was finally opening a window in a room long sealed shut. She smiled sadly. "There isn't much to tell," she said. "I just learned how to keep going. Some days were easier, some weren't. But I had you, and that made everything worth it." Ethan's eyes softened. "I don't remember ever saying thank you for that." She let out a gentle laugh. "You don't have to. You being here is enough." But Ethan didn't smile this time. "No, Mom, you deserve more than that. You spent years taking care of me, and I never stopped to think how that must have felt. I was so focused on my own life that I forgot you had one too." Emma felt tears rising but blinked them back. His voice was full of quiet guilt, and she didn't want that for him. She reached out, placing a hand over his. "Ethan, look at me. You have nothing to feel sorry for. I never wanted you to carry my pain. You gave me joy when I needed it most. That's more than enough." He looked down at their hands, her smaller one resting gently on his. "You really mean that?" She nodded. "Of course I do." For a moment, neither spoke. The warmth between them felt different, deeper, fuller. Years of silence and misunderstanding seemed to dissolve in that one moment of connection. Then, softly, Ethan said, "Sometimes I wish I could go back. I'd help more. I'd listen more. I just didn't understand what you were going through." Emma smiled, her eyes glistening. "That's what growing up is, Ethan. You start to see things differently. But you can't go back. You can only love better moving forward." He smiled faintly, a mix of relief and admiration crossing his face. "You always know what to say." She laughed lightly. "That's a mom's secret talent." The air grew lighter after that. The tension that had filled the room began to ease. Ethan leaned back, looking around the familiar living room, the same curtains, the same framed photos of his childhood trips, the same scent of home. Everything felt the same, yet somehow new. He looked at one of the photos on the wall as a small boy on his mother's shoulders, both of them laughing in the summer sun. "You were happy that day," he said softly. "I was," Emma replied. "I always was whenever you were with me." That truth hit him harder than he expected. He had always known his mother loved him, but hearing it so simply, so purely, felt different now that he understood what it had cost her. He swallowed hard, his voice quiet. "You really did give up a lot for me, didn't you?" Emma shook her head gently. "I didn't give up anything that mattered. You were what mattered." The sincerity in her tone filled the room like warmth. Ethan looked at her, eyes glassy, and for the first time, he saw her not just as the woman who raised him, but as someone who had lived, lost, and loved deeply. He wanted to say something more, something that would express how grateful he was. But before he could, the soft buzz of a phone interrupted them. Emma reached over to silence it, smiling faintly. "Seems like life doesn't want us getting too emotional tonight," she teased. Ethan chuckled, his mood lifting slightly. "Maybe it's a sign." She nodded. "A sign that we've both said what we needed to for now." He agreed. And as the conversation slowly faded into comfortable silence, a sense of peace filled the space. There were still things left unsaid, memories to revisit, wounds to fully heal, but this was a start. For years, Emma had believed that motherhood meant keeping her heart guarded, her feelings quiet. But now, sitting across from her grown son, She realized that love didn't always mean holding everything inside. Sometimes it meant letting go, being seen, and allowing someone to understand the truth of who you are. As Ethan stood to put away the glasses, he looked back at her and smiled a warm, knowing smile that said everything words couldn't. And in that quiet, golden hour of evening light, Emma felt something shift inside her. The distance that once stood between them had begun to fade. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, she felt like she and her son were finally finding their way back to each other, and to the love that had always been there, waiting to be spoken. Night had fallen quietly over the small suburban neighborhood. The sky outside was deep blue, sprinkled with faint stars. Inside the house, the warm glow of a single lamp filled the living room. The laundry was neatly folded now, stacked in careful piles beside the couch. Emma Blake sat back, tired but calm, her thoughts drifting to the talk she had shared with her son earlier. It had been honest and emotional, something they hadn't shared in years. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Ethan had spoken from his heart, and those words had softened something inside her that she hadn't realized had turned cold. She exhaled slowly, feeling lighter than she had in years. Just then, footsteps echoed on the stairs. Ethan appeared, wearing a simple gray t-shirt and holding 2 steaming mugs. "You used to make this for me whenever I was upset," he said with a half smile, handing her one. Emma looked down at the mug and smiled when she saw the marshmallows floating on top. "Hot chocolate," she said softly. "You remembered." "Of course," he said, sitting beside her. "I think this time it's my turn to make it for you." That small act touched her deeply. She had spent most of her life taking care of others, rarely being on the receiving end of simple kindness. Now, sitting there beside her grown son, she felt something shift. The space between them wasn't just mother and child anymore, it was 2 people, connected by love and understanding. Finally meeting halfway, they sat in comfortable silence for a few moments. The sound of the clock ticking on the wall filled the room. Emma took a sip, smiling at the taste. "You got the recipe right," she said playfully. "You even added too many marshmallows." Ethan chuckled. "That's the only way to make it right. I learned from the best." They both laughed, the warmth of the moment melting away the stiffness that had existed between them for years. It wasn't a big, dramatic change, just quiet, real peace. After a while, Ethan's tone grew softer. "Mom," he said, setting his mug down, "can I ask you something?" Emma turned to him, curious. "Of course. Were you ever happy after Dad left?" He asked carefully. "I mean, really happy?" The question caught her by surprise. For a second, she didn't know how to answer. Her eyes wandered to the folded laundry, the family photos on the wall, the cozy home she had built through years of sacrifice. "I had moments," she said finally. "Some were small, like when you'd tell me a story from school or when you made me laugh without trying. Those were the happy moments. I didn't need anything else." Ethan nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "I used to think you were invincible," he said quietly, "like nothing could hurt you. But now I realize you just didn't show it when things did." Emma smiled faintly. "That's what mothers do. We keep going, no matter what." He looked at her for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "You shouldn't have had to do it all alone." She placed her hand gently on his. "I wasn't alone, Ethan. I had you. You gave me strength without even realizing it." The sincerity in her voice filled the room. Ethan swallowed hard, emotion rising in his chest. "I wish I had told you sooner how much you mean to me." Her eyes softened. "You're telling me now? That's what matters." They both smiled, a quiet understanding passing between them. There was no need for more words. The years that had once felt like a wall between them were gone. After a few minutes, Emma stood up and walked to the window. The night breeze slipped through a small opening, carrying the scent of rain. She looked out at the neighborhood lights, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. "You know," she said, her voice distant but peaceful, "I used to stand here when you were little, waiting for you to come home from school. I'd watch for you every afternoon." Ethan joined her at the window, his hands in his pockets. "I remember. You'd wave from the porch, even if I pretended I didn't see you." She laughed softly. "You were always trying to act grown up." I guess I still am, he said, smiling. But tonight made me realize I'll always need my mom. She turned to look at him, eyes glistening. And I'll always need my son. The words came out simple, but heavy with meaning. It wasn't just about family. It was about two people finding their way back after years of silence, rediscovering the bond that had always been there but had been buried under time and pride. They sat back down on the couch. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and said quietly, "You know, Mom, I think I understand what love really looks like now." Emma tilted her head. "And what's that?" "It's not about big words or perfect lives. It's about someone who stays even when things are hard. That's what you did. You showed me love isn't about saying it. It's about living it." His words touched her deeper than he could imagine. She felt tears build again, but this time they were warm and comforting. "You learned that on your own," she whispered. "That's what makes me proud of you." They both fell silent again, letting the moment speak for itself. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, and the faint sound of rain outside all blended into a gentle rhythm. After a while, Ethan stretched his arms and leaned back, smiling softly. "You know, I almost didn't come home this weekend," he admitted. "I thought I'd be too busy, but now I'm really glad I did." Emma smiled, her heart full. "So am I, sweetheart. So am I." He looked around the room again, the same one he'd grown up in, but it felt different now. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a place of peace, of shared memories, of love that had weathered years of distance as the rain began to fall harder outside. Emma gathered the last folded shirt and placed it neatly on the pile. "Well," she said with a gentle laugh, "the laundry's finally done." Ethan grinned. "Took us all day, didn't it?" "It was worth it," she said. "Some things are—" They looked at each other and smiled, no need for more words. The air between them was filled with warmth, the kind that comes only after forgiveness and understanding. When Ethan finally stood to head upstairs, he paused at the foot of the stairs and turned back. "Good night, Mom," he said softly. "I love you." Emma's eyes filled with quiet joy. "Good night, Ethan. I love you too." After he disappeared upstairs, she sat for a while longer, listening to the rain tapping gently on the windows. She thought about everything they had been through, the heartbreak, the distance, the years of silence, and realized how it had all led to this quiet, perfect night. For the first time in a long while, Emma didn't feel like she was holding on alone. Her heart felt lighter, her home warmer. She looked at the neatly folded laundry beside her and smiled. It wasn't just clothes, it was a small symbol of her life, her patience, and her love as she turned off the lamp and walked toward her room. A peaceful thought crossed her mind. Sometimes the greatest surprises don't come from grand gestures or sudden changes. Sometimes they come in the softest moments when love, long buried under the noise of life, quietly finds its way back home. And that night, as the rain whispered against the windows, Emma slept with a full heart, knowing that her son hadn't just come home for the weekend. He had come home to her.